This is the iPhone 13. Is it worth upgrading to the iPhone 14, especially that fancy purple one? Well, folks, my name is Meet Kevin, and in this video, we're going to talk about my thoughts between the iPhone 14 and the iPhone 13. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the hopes that I had for the always-on display. I'm going to give you a different solution for that always-on display that doesn't actually cost you anything if you've already got some of the old devices from Apple. And I'm going to do a comparison of the video quality and audio quality of these two devices, as well as giving you a little bit of a secret into how you can solve your audio problems with the iPhone. And ultimately, we'll wrap this up into a verdict about whether or not I actually think the iPhone 14 Pro Max is worth it. Now, do keep in mind, I use both phones. One of them I use for business, one of them I use mostly for personal reasons. However, I have both of them with me almost always, and I feel the differences between the two in that I really feel almost no differences. The biggest difference that I notice between the two devices should be obvious. It is that one has a display that turns off after you stop using it. The other one just dims dark, as this one just did, and it's essentially the always-on display, where to preserve battery life, the refresh rate of this monitor declines to about 1 hertz, which is kind of like 1 refresh per second, and you don't really get a lot of change here, whereas here you have to pick up the phone to wake it to see what time it is. Now, I think that's pretty neat. I also like that you could throw a couple little widgets in over here. Take a look, for example, here at mine. I have a little widget for the Apollo app for Reddit, and I have a couple little ticker symbols there that I like to track, including Enphase and Tesla. But I have to say, I wish I had a lot more space for widgets on that homepage. We've got plenty of room for widgets, like a very large calendar or news segments within the actual phone once we unlock the phone. But the widgets page, I have to say, a little bit disappointing on the lock screen. You don't get a lot of room for notifications. And even when you disable notifications grouping, iPhone still groups notifications. As soon as it defaults to the always-on display, look at how it collapses your notifications. This is unfortunate because I was really hoping that when I put notifications on list mode in the settings, I would actually have a list of notifications that would stay open on that always-on display. That's actually not what you get when you have the always-on display. Instead, what I've done in my home office is I've taken an iPad that I no longer use on a daily basis. I mounted it onto this little arm that clamps under the bottom of my desk and hangs over, and it just sort of holds my iPad floating so it's not taking up desk space. And here's what I did. I turned on notifications for Seeking Alpha and Twitter and some other apps, and I just turn off auto lock for the iPad, and I pull down from the notification center at the top, and I get a list of all of my notifications that just stay there, and it becomes really easy for me to scroll up and down. That's kind of the hope that I had for the always-on display on the iPhone, except it always seems to collapse once the device actually locks into these little collapsed groups, even though I have groupings off. That then makes me have to essentially unlock the phone to see the full list, and then I'm like, well, crap, then I may as well be using the old iPhone 13. So, in terms of the always-on display, had a lot of enthusiasm for what we'd be able to do with it, and since that's just software, maybe we'll be able to get some better features for that in the future. But is that always-on display really worth it? In my opinion, not worth upgrading. But what about the camera and audio quality? Well, as usual, I think it's best to let your eyes decide. Here's a recording at 4K 60 on both of the phones. On the left side, we have the iPhone 13. On the right side, we have the iPhone 14. Both of these are being held out extended while I'm riding a Segway, so it's a little bit smoother than if I were walking. And both of them are on a DJI stabilizer, also helping smooth out the shot. not. So you got sort of a double stabilizer action going on here. But what I really want you to compare is that wide angle camera really that much different in these various different lighting settings that we're getting, from shade to light to interior to exterior? In a weird way, and it almost feels blasphemous to say it, but there are some angles where I like the raw iPhone 13 better, and there's some angles where I like the 14 better, and I'm like, would I pay $1,500 for, a toss-up? Probably not. And so I promise I was shocked when I also compared the audio of these two devices. This morning I recorded on the iPhone 14 and the iPhone 13 on the Segway to purposefully see if I can get some wind introduced to see how they would both handle it. So basically I'm holding my hand on the opposite end of where that forward-facing camera is and blocking some of that oncoming wind noise from going into the little mic input section. And I have to say, it was really hard to tell a difference, and in some cases, again, the iPhone 13 felt like it did better. Now, by no means was my test by far the most perfect, but I'm just saying, if on average everyday use, it's hard to discern the difference, is there really much worth paying an upgrade for if you're trying to get always on display, better camera, or better audio, if those are debatable benefits, and most of the other benefits you get through the software upgrade to iOS 16? In which case, I'd much rather be an advocate for you checking out this. Okay, folks, this is it. It's a pretty inexpensive Shure wired microphone, which just plugs directly into this XLR end. And look at that, right into Lightning. Let me show you how the audio sounds on that, also on the Segway. Now, there are wireless options for mics like these, but personally, I'm not the biggest fan of wireless. I think you get too much interference, you get too much frustration dealing with batteries, and when you need the darn things, they're just not as quick as having a little bit of a wired connection, which is what I have here. It does mean I have a dangling cord, though, between my hand and the other end of the iPhone, but that's okay, because I get that quality. I believe that this, driving around on the Segway, is almost perfect audio. Not only that, but by having this little muff on top, which I think you get like a 7 or 8 pack of these for like $10. They're super inexpensive. I'll link all these products down below, the mic, the muffs, and the cable. This gives you some of the most pure audio you could ever ask for from an iPhone. So now all of a sudden, I'm getting 4K 60 resolution on the iPhone 14 and that excellent quality audio. Now, you can look at the first part of the video where we compared the video side by side in some of those different lighting arrangements, and I think you can determine whether it really makes sense to jump up to that iPhone 14 on that forward-facing camera. One of the reasons I personally really love using these particular mics is they're really good at canceling out noise that's far around you. So sometimes when I'm filming outside, my biggest frustrations are airplanes, helicopters, loud motorcycles, police sirens, or sometimes if you're at an airport, just like getting on the plane and the plane being noisy, or quite frankly, sometimes I've filmed on the plane and it's extremely noisy. You just constantly hear the whirring of the plane. This kills a lot of that. So this is probably one of the best tools to have in your arsenal if you are somebody who is trying to film with an iPhone. So does that mean you really need to upgrade to the 14? Again, TBD on what you think regarding that video quality. Having both of them, I personally don't think it's very necessary. Now, what about other features? I mean, we've got that pretty awesome wider screen now because you've got that smaller cutout up top for the camera, and you get a little bit more of a graphic kind of interactive feel when you unlock your phone, or when you play music, or when you watch a YouTube video, or when you silence your phone, you get slightly different indicators. But is that really worth upgrading? Personally, on a daily basis, I use the iPhone 13 and the 14. That's because I use one mostly for personal things and one mostly for business things. And really, I use the phones almost interchangeably, with the exception of when I need to grab the camera. When I use portrait mode, forward-facing, to do thumbnails for YouTube thumbnails or whatever, I'm exclusively using the latest phone, because why not if I have both of them? But otherwise, have I noticed a personal difference difference in either of the phones in functionality when I'm switching between the two? Do I really notice any kind of speed differences? Do I really notice any functionality differences between the mail apps or the other apps I use, or messaging, or its connection to the watch, or its 5G speeds? Quite frankly, no. I don't actually, as a user, notice the differences. Are they there? Probably, because we know there are differences in the tech specs. Now, to help you with that determination, something that I did do is I just switched from the iPhone 14 to the 13 within my last little segue ride here on this. And that's all just to try to help you determine, is that camera quality really a noticeable difference? Let me know in the comments what you think, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.